Hattie Hill talks about the difference between caring and carrying. And I've noticed that for women especially, it seems to be difficult to differentiate between caring and carrying, to the point where every waking moment is filled with the things they carry from work. And man, that is just a one-way ticket to burning out.
And now for something completely different.
Welcome to
Surrounded by idiots.
Radio Podcast.
Hey, welcome back. This is Tony Dufresne, PhD, your host. And today I have a very special guest that is going to chat with us about business and small business, and especially in the nuance of coffee, which you know is near and dear to my heart. It is Michael Ryan. He is the joint founder of Threadbare Coffee Company. He's a published author, international speaker, creator of multiple online courses. Man, you're way too important to be on this show, I'll tell you that. He's a licensed Q grader. He's that's the coffee thing, right? The Q grader?
The Q stands for quality, yeah.
Okay, good. At level 1, so you're a SOM as well? God, get out of here, man.
Just level 1, though. There's 4 levels.
I don't care. I'm a level 0, so level 1 works for me. He's a certified business coach, health and wellness coach. He's got a ton of experience in the coffee industry, where he got his background. And I'm assuming from that background, that's where you've kind of come into your niche in terms of being a consultant and a coach to people that want to get into the coffee industry, people that want to start their own small business. So welcome to the show, Michael. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So can I kind of get you to kind of walk me through really what it is you do with clients and the type of people that you come across initially who want to get into coffee, and not only into coffee, but starting a small business on their own they've never started a small business before.
Yeah, 100%. I after 13 years of being in the coffee industry, I started to notice a pattern that was really concerning. I realized that most cafe and roastery owners are actually not profitable or paying themselves a paycheck. So when that happens, I mean, the end result is always exhaustion, burnout, overwhelm. And so I created Threadbare Coffee to meet with owners on a regular basis to equip them with the tools they need to become profitable, to pay themselves, and really ultimately set up the day-to-day to run itself. Because when that's possible, when they're flourishing, they can actually create something where other people can flourish, their staff, their customers, their contractors, whoever it is.
Do most of the people that you have dealt with in the past, is this their first go around with a small business? And is it just because they're like me, like you, they just are obsessed with coffee and they want to start their bit? I mean, what's the genesis of that typically?
The vast majority, it's their first time ever running a business in any form. I do have some clients who it's their second time around. But I like to use the analogy of a business like an airplane. And one thing that's true about airplanes is if you know how to fly one airplane, that doesn't mean you know how to fly a different airplane. You actually have to get certified and licensed to fly each type of airplane. And so even if folks have had previous business experience, of course they have a leg up. But I mean, a lot of times I work with people who they were owning another business, but that business was not profitable. So they still never learned how to run a profitable business, or they ran a franchise and now they're actually the owner for the first time. So there's all sorts of folks, but the general theme I would say is people who it's their first time running a business, no previous business experience, no previous coffee experience. That's the general trend. Those are the people who tend to start coffee companies.
So that's a pretty tall mountain to climb initially. It's interesting because I'm sure that you've dealt with this before with clients, and I've had a number of small businesses as I've gone through my machinations and stuff, and I've also coached and counseled a number of people who have gone through the same thing, in not necessarily in coffee. Actually, I don't think I've ever dealt with anybody in the coffee industry, but what I've found is that a lot of people, when they're super gung-ho because they have the passion, right? It comes in and the emotion is there, the passion is there. Plus they want to just be their own boss, which I've been my own boss for, ever. And it's awesome. I mean, but it does have its costs to it. And it is and seeing as though I like to talk about confidence, I like to talk about, your mindset and perspective and context and stuff. Do you find that they come in with the gung-ho attitude, get hit with a lot of, knowledge, and then or truth, and then and then is there some sort of a crisis of confidence or something there? Do you see that happening?
I do, yeah. And are you familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Oh, yes, indeed. Yeah. In
So
fact,
I
I lived most of
see.
my life until I realized what it was, and I thought, oh, okay, no wonder why I think I know everything.
Yeah, I see it. I see that arc as also a kind of a sub pattern, moving from, you know, not knowing, having no experience and little to no confidence, but then having just enough information to think you know everything.
Yeah, right.
But that's
Like most people,
unsustainable.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, as they say, and part of it is because when your scope is so small,
Yeah.
and you know everything within that scope, you don't realize. We were just talking about becoming a parent and how that kind
Yeah.
of widens your scope. It's the same thing. Becoming a business owner, it widens your scope, and all of a sudden you start to realize you don't know as much as you thought you knew, and a lot of people don't. That kind of wrecks them from a confidence standpoint. That experience is very shattering
Mhm.
in some ways, and from the outside looking in, it can be confusing. But for me as a coach and a consultant, I see that, and that's a lot of times where I enter into the narrative. That's where I partner with them.
Yeah, I would think that is the most important part of your job. I would think in terms of the context of starting not only the business but the coffee and all, but
Yeah.
just the psychological aspects of
Yeah.
grounding somebody with this being overwhelmed initially, because that's the one thing
100%,
where
yeah.
their expectations are probably, I love it, and so it's just going to flow. Whereas
Yeah.
you and I and the other people that have done
Yeah.
business stuff before are saying, yeah, that doesn't work that way.
It's
Yeah,
not
typically
quite
it doesn't
enough.
really.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but
Yeah, yeah.
when it gets into it, you're like, "Ooh, boy, this is rough." Do you have? Can you recall maybe like something or a client that you had dealt with that kind of dealt with this same type of situation, and how you handled it, and then how they handled it going forward after you guys worked on it?
Yeah, a lot of clients, one of the first things they need help kind of realizing, and it's very much not that people are unintelligent. It's much more they either just need to be reminded of something, or nobody's ever said, certain key pieces of information, like your coffee business is a business.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people, that's like almost eye-opening or earth-shattering to think of it, because what they actually wanted to create was more like a community group.
Mm-hmm.
But a community group is a really expensive hobby to have. But a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times that's what they've unintentionally created. So helping them see it as a business, and then I'm a huge fan of universal principles. The methods are many, but the principles are few. And so what I teach would apply to any business. And I've had people like follow me on Instagram. I just had a bunch of ice cream shops follow me on Instagram because they're like, everything that you're saying applies to us. We're ice cream shops. So
Right.
I have a growing ice cream shop following, which is fun. But those universal principles are necessary, I think, for success in any industry, in any business. And one of the principles that always comes up that needs to be either addressed or refreshed, people need to be reminded more than taught, Hannah More said. And one of the huge ones is confidence, helping people kind of rethink what confidence is, rethink what things like imposter syndrome are, and then having a healthy, what I would say a healthier relationship with perfectionism. Healthier maybe is not the best word, but certainly more helpful relationship
I
with
actually like
perfectionism.
that. I like that because that's as a perfectionist, as a recovering. Well, you never recover from it, right? As a
You
functioning,
try. You try.
a hopefully higher funcking
A higher
perfectionist than I
functioning
used to be,
perfectionist.
right?
Yes.
It never goes
Yeah.
away, right? So
Yeah.
you have. So I like the way that you describe that in terms of it. Kind of working with it and understanding it.
Yeah,
But it is so
I
true.
love it. Yeah, and the vast majority of my clients are women, or they're married couples. So I'm working with a husband and a wife, generally speaking, or they're women, and confidence is a huge thing that it almost always just comes up naturally. I don't usually have to like prompt it, because it's usually lying right at the root of most of what's going on in the business.
Does it come up at a particular spot most of the time? Is it when the rubber meets the road in terms of like the conversion? Because I find that a lot of people who get into coffee, a lot of people get into ice cream are there's an artistic aspect to them. They're artists, and artists don't like being business people. right? And I think that's where that community thing comes in, right? That's what they want to create. They want to create the relationship aspect of it, but at the business part, they're like, well, do I have to? Where does it come up from? And let's just niche to more of from a woman's perspective. Where does that come up in your business, in the coffee business, in starting something like that?
It comes up almost as soon as we start talking about the coffee business as a business. That's generally because, like what you said, there's this desire to create a safe space, a space of community, a space of warmth, a space of invitation, and for that space to be profitable and sustainable. Thinking of it like a business is important, but generally those things are seen as combative, and so a lot of folks will kind of pick the part of it they like and try to ignore the part of it they dislike so much. Right. But it doesn't go away. It just goes underground, and then it boils up later in some other context. So I've noticed, and this is just my personal experience. I've noticed that in the married couples, the men seem to be more open to that idea of running the business like a business. But for the women, especially, that it feels like the proposal seems to almost feel like it's going against their principles. Like that's not why we started this thing in the first place, which I totally understand. But it is a different like path to walk, because some people will be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, I'm in. And other people, especially the women, are like, no, that's not why we started this thing.
But it's so true, because it's actually, that's not the reason they started it. But if they want it to 100%. Be a sustainable business, then you have to walk, you have to put your, your toe in on the other side of the line, and kind of go through that. When it gets to the point where, and especially maybe from like a single woman's perspective, I would think that with the couples that there'd be more of a balance, or the opportunity to balance, because you have strengths on both sides. Whereas if it's just a woman going into it, she's confronted with this this I mean, what do you call it? It's not a crisis, but it's just it's a reality, right? It's a reality that there was, the expectation wasn't there for that. How do you, as a coach, work with her in terms of making that transition to accepting that part of it, and then integrating that part of it in, without losing the passion and without losing that commitment that came from that originally?
For sure. I think in general, I work a lot with, like I said, universal principles. And one of the most helpful principles that applies to business, but it also applies to confidence, is what the ancients would have called a false dichotomy. So a false dichotomy is a fake, either or proposition. So either business or community. Yeah. But if as soon as we frame it that way, nobody wins. We can't. It's a win-lose proposition. So creating that space of, hey, we might be thinking of this more in black and white terms when it's really a both and situation, or it can be a both and situation, community and business, which is kind of in the middle, but the Buddhists, I think, would describe it more like the apex of a triangle. It's in the middle, but it's a level above. And I like that imagery of a triangle.
That's a great image.
Confidence to me is the same. And I kind of piggyback my frameworks on each other. So, on one end of the spectrum, we have insufferable arrogance, and especially the women are like, no. Guys, interestingly enough, are like, I could go there.
Interesting.
Like,
that is.
They don't mind being the insufferably arrogant person. Women, actually, I find, are mortified by that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
They're mortified by the idea of being the insufferably arrogant person.
Right. Which makes sense, because there's this sociological, or this societal sort of underlying thing that indicates that if they do, then they'll be considered such and such, or it takes them out of, it puts them into more of a judgmental position. And nobody doesn't like not being liked, and they feel as though that they can't get away with as much. Whereas guys, they don't care. Right. They'll just they'll be the mean guy, or they'll be the I mean, it's not about being mean, but it's about taking that particular position on things.
Yeah. And we don't really have a positive framework for that archetype on the female side of things. Like you can imagine a direct, outspoken male leader, but if you apply those same characteristics to a female leader, we don't have a positive archetype for that.
We don't, sadly, and that's the whole thing about getting that change, because it should change. It should be a positive thing as well. But I'm totally with you on that completely. Yeah. So when it gets to that point where she doesn't want to take on that particular role, and what you've described in terms of the dichotomy is that whole binary aspect. It's the either or. It's the black and white versus more of a dimensional thinking where it can enmesh and integrate both together. But as you work through this, and as you work through that complicated, it's very complicated because it goes against somebody's natural flow. But it really doesn't. So what do you do as you go through the nuts and bolts, right? Of going through the business? How do you integrate that? How do you support their position as well as try to open up the reality to where they can start to integrate that?
Yeah. I do try to frame confidence quite a bit differently than I hear most people frame confidence. I was just having a conversation with a client the other day, and I asked them, what's the opposite of arrogance? Because they're terrified of being seen as this insufferable arrogant, like I said. And I asked them, what's the opposite? What's the other end of the spectrum? And they said humility. I said, no. The opposite of arrogance is insecurity. Seeing yourself as better than everybody else, that's arrogance. The opposite of that is seeing yourself as lower than everybody else, and that's a version of insecurity. The balance, the apex of the triangle, is humble confidence. So arrogance is just as destructive as insecurity. Insecurity is just as destructive and unhelpful as arrogance. And framing them as both equally negative is helpful, because it helps people see like, oh, I've actually overcompensated. I've overcorrected, and now I'm on the insecure side of things where I'm afraid to assert my opinions. But really what people need from me, especially as a business owner, is humble confidence, the apex of that triangle. And just reframing it doesn't magically solve anything per se, but it gives us the language and the mental model to have a conversation about confidence that is the apex of the triangle versus it can sound like I'm saying, hey, be more arrogant, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying go for the apex of that triangle. Be more humbly confident.
What a great way to do it, because it gives you that different perspective, or that perspective shift in terms of bookending. And if you can bookend, it doesn't show them as the lower end. It shows them as the where to be is the apex, or the middle, if you want to look at it from a straight line perspective, is to meet in the middle between those two, versus seeing that one as just something that you never want to get to and never want to attain. And you won't, because if you're not dialed in, or if you're not accepting that as something that you want to go to as a goal, that the arrogance thing, then you'll never do it anyway, and it goes against everything that you stand for, and that's the conflict that you're coming up against, right, with your clients.
Right, because in a binary black and white system, if somebody is struggling with insecurity, if the only other option available to them is the other end of the spectrum, anything I say will sound like I'm saying be more arrogant.
Right. Exactly.
Because that's the only other option available as far as they know. So I have to first create a framework where there is additional options. And I even differentiate between like the low middle and the high middle. The low middle, the straight middle of the spectrum, is somebody who flip-flops. They're confident with some people and they're insecure with other people. They're arrogant with some people and then they're super timid with other people. So they flip-flop around. That's a low version of the middle. So that's why I like the idea of the Buddhist middle way, that apex of the triangle. That's the option. It's a kind of an option C, but it's a level above the other options available that I like to make people aware of.
The level above makes perfect sense, and it goes into kind of where my gig is in terms of dealing with people with confidence. It's the transcendent of the linear. It's going into more of the dimensional and understanding. If you have the innate sense of self, and you work on your innate sense of self, you have a level of introspection. You're able to do that, and you're able to see. And you're able to see when you get into situations, and especially with new businesses, I would think, and with the women that I've worked with in the past, they get into the businesses and there's this level of incompetence, not lack of confidence, but just a level of incompetence. But we all have levels of incompetence, especially if you're starting something new and starting a business. And you and I know this, man, that's a lot of work. And there's a lot of stuff, and you don't know what you don't know in the quadrant of knowing, right?
Right.
Feynman says it, man. If you don't know what you don't know, you just be ready for it, and then you're not going to know it when you do know it, right?
I love it.
So, but that's what happens. And if you can transcend above that and just understand and realize and be okay and content with the fact that you will be incompetent in going forward. And it's like it's like the first principle too. It's like, the kind of the Socrates first principle. You go in with a childlike mind, you go in with an open mind, and you go and that's the key shift that I have found really helps. And it sounds to me like that's exactly what has worked for you. And your clients, especially with your women clients, because because there's an automatic conflict when it gets to that business aspect and that new role that they have to take over. Or they have to assimilate that new role, right? As a part of the integration, right?
Yeah, without taking on too much that they burn themselves out.
Right.
And which
is easy to do, very
easy to do. Yeah, for business owners in general, but also for the women that I work with. Hattie Hill talks about the difference between caring and carrying. And I've noticed that for women especially, it seems to be difficult to differentiate between caring and carrying, to the point where every waking moment is filled with the things they carry from work. And man, that is just a one-way ticket to burning out.
It is.
So that's such a
great example.
I almost always bring up just even that concept with my female clients. And then I tend to recommend specific books especially written by women for my female clients, because I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm pretending to be an expert in something. But I also have learned a lot from these other women and want to be a conduit if possible, if the situation allows for it, if there's enough trust there for me to pass along what they have taught me and equip my female clients with those, even just like what I just said about Hattie Hill and differentiate between caring and carrying has changed my mindset. And I hope to just be a conduit. I didn't say it. Hattie Hill said it, but
but that's brilliant, isn't it? Let's say that there's somebody out there, somebody's listening right now, and they're starting a business, thinking about starting a business, not necessarily coffee, because as we know, there's a lot of universal principles.
Absolutely.
When they first start out and they have the passion for it and they start getting into the nuts and bolts, what's a good pattern interrupt? What's a good process or a concept or some sort of a mantra that you can kind of throw out there that would help to keep the ship kind of going the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great question. I think the human body is one of the best examples for so many things. And one of the things I love about the human body is it is the perfect balance of organic, material and bones and structure. And our business needs to strike the exact same balance. There needs to be enough bones and structure for the personality, for who we are to shine through. And what I love about that analogy is, you and I would never ever say we're the same person, but do we have the same basic bone set? Absolutely. All humans do. Same with businesses. All businesses are like 95% identical. All healthy businesses, I should say, are like 95% identical. And that's a good thing. It's not going to erase the uniqueness of what you're creating. It's going to give enough structure to empower the uniqueness of what you're creating. Just like our bones are what allow us to live and breathe and express ourselves. Your business is going to need some of those, what a lot of people would consider like more hard things, like concrete things. But those concrete frameworks, those structures are what allow the thing that you want to build, the community you want to create, the softer, warmer, more inviting side. It's what allows that to actually exist in a sustainable fashion.
That's perfect. And that's such a great analogy. I actually use the same analogy for confidence. I said, if you have the bones and the structure for like innate confidence, then you can allow for the other things to happen and they'll flow around you. And it's about surrendering to the process. If you're okay and you're grounded and you have a good foundation and you're rocking and rolling and you're like in your stuff, then you can flow to whatever works and you can make it happen. So that's great. Michael, thank you so much. And where can you say what your coffee company is and what you can provide service wise, and then where they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, main thing. So I help cafe and roastery owners turn a healthy profit, pay themselves a living wage, primarily through small group and one-on-one coaching. So you can find me on Instagram at Threadbare Coffee. Their website is at threadbarecoffeecompany.com.
That's great. And I will post all that information on both the YouTube notes and also in the podcast notes as it goes forward. So thank you again, Michael. Appreciate it. And if you want any information in terms of me, you know where to find me, tony@javabud.com. I'll put that on the bottom. I hope things are good. Thanks again, Michael. Appreciate it. And have a good one. And we will talk to you later. Thanks.